Broadcasting? Okay. My name's Frank Benish. I'm the chairman of the Board of Adjustment. I'll call the meeting to order. The first order of business would be reviewing our minutes from last session, but I don't have them,
I did not print one.
and so we'll work on that next time we meet. So the only other agenda item is the public hearing regarding the appeal for Mr. Schuldenagle's property, formerly Abenaki Ski Club. And let's see, who will be, we have 5 voting members, so it'd be neither Martha nor Gino will be voting, and the rest of us are all voting. Great turnout, we have 100% turnout. So I'll open the public hearing. I'll first have a comment, and at least for those of you in the audience, this is an appeal of administrative decision. That means the Board of Adjustment is going to try, listen to arguments and try to determine whether or not the town's actions or the town's interpretation of the zoning ordinance is accurate. We are limited to, we can't make things up. We have to follow what is in the ordinance and whether or not something's permitted or not permitted. And whether or not we feel something is desirable or not is not our job. Even though zoning is intended to promote the health, safety, and welfare of the community, it's the planning board's job to develop the zoning ordinance and have it adopted by the town legislative body. Our job is to interpret that when somebody appeals and says the zoning ordinance is being interpreted incorrectly. This is a public hearing. We provided notice last week in the Conway Sun. It was posted on bulletin boards here, also on e-news, and certified letters were sent to all the abutters. 4 of the abutters, we've gotten cards back from 4. We haven't gotten a card back from Susan Keene, Music Survey, who was the applicant, Richard Aprins, who I have got an email from him, Carol Harmon, Ralph Schroen, the applicant, and Sean Haggerty. The town offices were closed yesterday, so I'm not surprised that we might not have some of these. With that, normally we have the applicant first come up and make a statement, but I thought it might, and I'm happy to do that, though I think it might flow better if we first invite Burr to kind of explain his decision and why the town came up with the position they have, and then ask the applicant to begin his presentation, and then Burr, you have another chance to discuss it further. Would that be helpful? Okay, you're welcome to come on up here. And since we have a limited number of people in the audience, let me say we do have some copies of the application available here, including additional materials. And why don't I just, all this was posted on the town website, but both for people in the audience as well as the board. Pages 1 through 12 was the original appeal. Pages 13 through 22 is additional material that was provided by the applicant. Pages 23 on are letters from various abutters, and at the request of one of the abutters, Lee Matesky, it also includes excerpts of information that was in the town property file. So, Burr, why don't we start with you?
Sure.
Right.
Go ahead, if you go ahead and
Sure,
make
yeah.
a quick statement, and then undoubtedly there'll be some questions.
Okay. Yeah, this septic system application came for me. I took a look at the site and then reviewed the zoning ordinance, which is what I'm asked to do on all, make a site visit and compare it to the zoning ordinance. What I saw on this site was one, if this had been a ski club, I looked from the town files, and it seemed like it was pretty clearly been a ski club for quite some time, since I think the 70s. Then I saw that they were converting this to a 5-bedroom house. That was the proposal. And the applicant made the statement that the house had 5 bedrooms in it, whereas the town's file said there was basically 5, in talking to the building inspector, there were 5 rooms with beds in them, but I think there was something like 40 bunks in there, so I wasn't seeing that the same as a 5-bedroom house anyway. So other parts of the zoning ordinance in there, it implies that if you discontinue a use for 7 years, that you've sort of lost your right to that use. So sort of by extension of that, I'm saying, okay, now they're going from a ski club to residential, so they would need to comply with the minimum lot sizing requirements for residential. They did not. They didn't come. I think the applicant, Bob Paduga's comment was it couldn't support 1 bedroom, but the ordinance says if you don't meet the minimum lot sizing requirement, you get 2. That's a reasonable use of the land. So that was my opinion, was that the lot would be suitable for a 2-bedroom design, but not the 5-bedroom design. They're certainly taking a look at the lot. It's quite a challenging lot there are wetlands and very poorly drained soils and a stream through it, and certainly the existing situation is less than desirable. So anyway, that was the basis for my decision.
Okay.
Summary of it.
Then you're referring, of course, to section 2.3, which says that it's limited to 2 bedrooms. It just says that shall be limited to the construction of a dwelling unit not to exceed 2 bedrooms.
Correct.
Okay, any people have questions or?
A couple.
Okay, go ahead. By the way, I should just so everybody knows, introduce ourselves. Dave Mason, Jennifer Cello, Frank Benish,
Joan
Audrey,
Aubrey,
Vice Chair,
Brian Walker.
Jerry Dougherty.
Martha Benish.
and one of the board members, sorry to interrupt, this is something I meant to say. Dave Metesky is sitting in the audience, and he's recused himself because he is a butter. And also, for the record, I know at least 3 or 4 members of the board have in the past or presently have been represented by the applicant's attorney, and I think we've all decided that's not sufficient to recuse ourselves. But I want to make sure you're aware of that. Also, I don't think it'd be feasible. Not be much of a board lift. Go ahead.
Well, I think that was.
Oh, sorry. Joe was going to ask some questions.
Yeah, the lot size and the soil type is what drives it into a non-conforming status,
Correct.
right? And so there is no way to put a 5-bedroom septic system on there and meet state standards, or just that's the town requirement. You can't meet the town requirement.
Right. I doubt it would meet the state's requirements for lot sizing criteria. The states as well. I'm quite sure it would not.
And
So could you even build a 5-bedroom septic system?
I mean,
Now there's a difference. The difference between
I'm sorry.
that's where I'm going.
sorry,
Yeah.
there's a difference between being able to actually physically construct a system that big and what the lot will support based on the lot capacity or lot sizing criteria. Their design shows a 5-bedroom design with, I think, 3 waivers to make that 5-bedroom design work. So physically, they're able to fit it on the lot, provided the state grants the waivers. But
those
as far
waivers
as the
were-
lot sizing criteria goes, no, it does not.
And those waivers were for?
One of them was a separation to drainage ditch
Mhm.
that's sort of uphill of the septic system. I don't recall them all,
Okay.
and I could pull the file, but they were mostly separation waivers.
Is one of them distance from that stream?
No, I don't believe it is. I don't believe
Is
so.
we have-
It's from a drainage that flows into that stream, no, forward drainage that flows into that stream, but not the stream itself.
Now, the other question I have kind of goes to grandfathered status, and the confusion I have in my mind that there's a building here, it exists, does it not have 5 bedrooms or not? So you were saying that its current tax records, and since what, the 70s you're saying, was that it was a what? Just a
It was a ski club.
ski club, and that classification is, I'm not looking for
I-
more
I would-
familiar people with the
I
town.
mean, if asked, I would say within our zoning, the closest thing is probably a lodging house.
A lodging house within the zoning.
Clearly, it's not a single-family house by our zoning's definition.
Mhm.
But the lodging house definition isn't exactly what we have here, but it's the closest in my mind, but that's something necessary to talk about.
But the change back to a single-family home is not a non-conforming use for
No,
that
it's
zone.
not.
It
That's
is
a
not.
change in use, is
It's a
what it
change in
is.
use, but it's not a non-conforming
No, it's
use. Okay. Just wanted to be clear about that. Then there's the issue to me of, and I don't know how to word this correctly, the public safety and health. What's better for supporting the use of that house? A 2-bedroom or a 5-bedroom septic? I mean, is the issue of putting the 5-bedroom septic on there is it just won't work? Or is it questionable or can't be done without waivers? I'm just,
Well, no, the issue with the 5-bedroom one is that you're putting too much wastewater into the lot. You know, there's a nitrates issue in there from it. It's not actually building the system and making it function on the lot. So that's the issue, is you're putting too much into too small of space is basically, is basically how the state's looking at it. Not that it won't fit on the lot.
Okay.
Now, your other comment was, and I think Bob DeFuto's comment was, well, the house is big enough to fit what's the equivalent of a family that would fit a 4-bedroom or 5-bedroom thing in there. So if we limit this to a 2-bedroom house now, are people realistically going to move into the house and then exceed the capacity of the system, and then it's going to cause troubles to the system?
right.
I guess,
That's an enforcement issue.
right, I get, that's an enforcement issue, and there's nothing stopping them from constructing the leach bed large enough to handle the additional flow. They just would not get an approval for 5 bedrooms. They would just get an approval for 2 bedrooms. So if, say, there was an issue with the stream later on with nitrates or flows downstream, the town would have something to go back on and say, okay, you're just putting too much into the ground there. You know, but if you were worried about it, the system blowing out because it didn't have enough capacity right, hydraulically right at the system there, they could still make the leach field large enough if they wanted to handle that, to hydraulically get the water into the ground. It's just not appropriate for the environment.
Good, no, that's, answers my question. And you're right, that's what I was looking at, was
Okay.
what Bob's argument was. I
Yeah.
think you answered it. Thank you.
Can I ask you a question? I think reading the septic plan by Emmons Survey, they say that there is not enough soil. They say they have 2.6% of what they need, or 2.6 acres.
26. Well, I'm sorry.
But I mean, they're actually saying they don't have the land. I mean, this is what the surveyors are saying. Am I reading that correctly?
That's correct.
So if the surveys are saying they don't have enough land, why are we even going through this?
Because they appealed the decision. They have a right to appeal.
Okay, fair enough.
Barry, your recommendation to the selectmen, we're being asked to decide whether or not the selectmen erred in their ruling. Your recommendation to the selectmen was based on your skills and education as an engineer and your understanding of our zoning ordinance. Is that correct?
Yes, yes it is.
I'm neither a soil scientist or an engineer, so I have to go with what you're telling us.
Right, and again, the way I saw it, I'm totally frank with it, is what certainly makes sense, you know, for the lot, kind of common sense, this certainly is not it. But the regulations are the regulations, so, and when I looked at the regulations, and I said, boy, even based on the regulations, I don't, you know, it's gray at best to me that the regulations would allow this or not. Is it grandfathered?
Which regulations, the state or the
No,
zoning
no,
ordinance?
I'm just referring to the town's regulations. To me, it wasn't clear in there, at least I couldn't
But
say
the only,
definitively that this was grandfathered.
but the only regulation at issue is the zoning ordinance.
Correct.
Can I,
Go ahead, I'm sorry.
I see one of our selectmen is here. May I ask John a question? John, was your decision on this matter based solely on the recommendation from the town engineer and the town building inspector?
Basically, yes.
Thank you.
Just one last question. So I think, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but I think what you're saying is, in your view, section 2.3, which talks about only limiting construction of a dwelling unit not to exceed 2 bedrooms, I think even though nobody said it, I think you're contending that the change in use from, let's say, a lodging house to a single-family residential, that action also triggers this paragraph.
Correct, correct, that's exactly how I
It
interpreted it.
would only trigger their need to comply with section 6 of the zoning ordinance. And when you get to section 6 of the zoning ordinance, they'd be lucky if they would get a 2-bedroom system.
Yes, the ordinance has always been a little awkward there. Section
Yeah.
6 says for subdivisions. So certain consultants have come back saying a lot, you know, a lot of record isn't a subdivision, so that doesn't apply. So basically they're saying if you have a lot of record, you can do whatever you want. People were making that argument. So for that reason, I think 2.3 was added into the zoning ordinance to say, okay, this isn't just subdivisions, this is lots of record, basically, that, you know, that was how it transpired from, I guess, you know, over the last X number of years.
Let me push the question one step further.
Sure.
If somebody had let's say a house up on Tyrell, that might be somewhat on a small lot,
Yeah.
for example, and it's a 3-bedroom house on a non-conforming lot, and they need a new septic system design approved, would you contend that that new septic system also would have to be limited to 2 bedrooms?
No,
Because,
it would be grandfathered. If they had on record that it was a 3-bedroom house, the town records had on record that it was a 3-bedroom house.
even though it maybe predated, maybe the septic system predated
Right.
DES and zoning.
Right, that's
So-
always the way it is. If they have it on record that it was a house. Again, my contention was going from the ski club to a
So
house.
it's the change
It
of
was
use.
not, you
It's
know.
the change of use that's driving
Right.
this. Okay, thank you. Other questions? Okay, let's ask the applicant to come up, and your excuse for now.
Thanks, Bert.
So, and this is Richard Sager, representing I'm never going to.
I know.
Ralph Schindel.
Yeah, that's good. I'm Rick Sager, I'm representing the applicants. Obviously, we are here because we don't agree with the town's position, and there's a number of reasons for that. And I'll give you something that's sort of a sideline, I guess. This is just a deed history of the house. If each of you would just want to take one and pass it down. In essence, what this says, this is a series of deeds. I think there's 5 of them there. I was just anticipating 5 members. But the first deed in that chain of title is 1922, and it talks about this parcel having a building on it, land and building. And that description, I wish I had been doing that title, because that's one of the easiest titles I've ever seen. There's only 4 deeds between 1922 and the current deed, and the description never changes, and it's always talked about land and building. So we know that this building has been there since at least 1922, which would make sense. It's always been a 5-bedroom house. How do we know that? We know that from a few different sources. One, I've again made a copy of the town's tax assessment card. This particular one happens to be from 2005, and it refers to the house as having 5 bedrooms. You can take one and pass it along. I don't know how many of those I
Actually, in the packet already.
I think we all have that.
Okay,
Yeah, that's one.
I think, fine. So I would just don't want to bury you with too much paper.
I mean, we all have everything that you've provided.
Yes,
Yes.
you didn't have the first thing that I provided to you. We also have a letter, which you have. I have the original here if you want it. This came directly to Amanuensis Survey from Elaine Smith Ferrugia, and it says, I, Elaine Smith Ferrugia, certify that I resided all of my childhood years in the property listed above until 1981 or thereabouts, when my mother sold the property. There were always 6 bedrooms, 1 on the first floor, my parents, and 5 on the second floor. Now, as far as the change of use, I don't agree. This has always been a 5-bedroom house. It's still a 5-bedroom house. Even when it was being used as a ski lodge, I guess, I'm not really quite sure if there was any ever permit issued for that. It probably came into effect before you had zoning. But it essentially continued to be used as a house. It wasn't a gas station, it wasn't anything else. People slept there, people ate there, they used the bathrooms. The use really doesn't change. It's not a significant change. To your point, if you have a 5-bedroom house, it has 5 bedrooms in it, you should have a 5-bedroom system. It's sort of, I've been scratching my head about this case quite a bit. You're going to use the same amount of wastewater coming from that house regardless of what you have in the ground. If you have a 5-bedroom house, which you do, you're going to have 5 bedrooms worth of water going into the ground. So the question becomes, do you want 5 bedrooms worth of water going into a 2-bedroom system or into a 5-bedroom system? If I was the next door neighbor, I would want 5 bedrooms worth of water going into a 5-bedroom system. And I'll also point out that, let's say, and I don't know why the town didn't do anything beforehand, because from what I understand, this property was supported by a cesspool, which on the lot, this is the new septic system that they're going to put in. This is the house, and the failed cesspool was right here and was bubbling over and apparently just draining into the stream that is there. The town should have, and the town's got plenty to do, but if someone had called the town and said, look, we got bubbling septic coming out of the ground, the town would have come and taken a look at the system and said, well, it's in failure, you need to repair it. And what would have been repaired with? It would have been repaired with a 5-bedroom system. Why? Because the house has 5 bedrooms in it. And this, today, it's no different. You still have a 5-bedroom house, and you need a 5-bedroom system. In reading some of the correspondence from abutters, there were some concerns about the the new owners coming in and maybe wanting to bulldoze the property and put up a big house there. Well, they can't do that if they wanted to because the lot is too small to put up a new 5-bedroom house. So that was never their intention. They're actually renovating the house. They're sanding down the floors, and that's what they're going to do. They plan to stay here, you know, use it as a winter house. I guess they live in Florida. So they seem to be trying to do the right thing. A 5-bedroom system costs more than a 2-bedroom system. But I will say, you know, if we had a different scenario, I would agree that it would be relegated to something less than 5 bedrooms. So, for example, if during the time it was being used as a place for skiers to sleep, and they had decided to remove some walls upstairs and transform what is a 5-bedroom house into something less than a 5-bedroom house, then that would be an indication that they meant to abandon the 5-bedroom structure. They didn't do that. We still have the same, from all that I've been able to find out, the same exact layout as it was in 1922. It's been taxed as a 5-bedroom house. And, you know, I just don't see any other way around it. The state will approve this system, probably with the waivers, if the state gets the okay from this board to overturn the Board of Selectmen's decision. If I may,
How do you know they're going to approve it?
there was an email to Burr Phillips in your package from the DES. I don't have that with me.
That's page 24.
Yeah, it's in here.
Which basically says if the house is grandfathered as a house as of 1967, I think it is, again, I don't have it in front of me, they would approve the system. And it's essentially a repair and replacement of a pre-existing system.
It's a new system. It was a cesspool, now it's a system. So it's not a repair, it's a new system.
It's a replacement.
It's replacement.
Repair, replacement, it's,
Well,
That's
it's-
different. No, it's not
It's not repair.
repair.
well, I'm using terminology that the state would use. If you have a system that pre-exists 1967, when the regulations went into effect that says you have to have a state-approved septic system, if you have one prior to 1967 and you need to repair it or replace it, whatever you want to call it, they would allow you to, and still do, allow you to repair or replace
As I
in
said
kind.
before, I'm not a soil scientist or an engineer, but to me, the word replace means if I have something here and I fix it, I'm replacing it. I'm repairing it. But if I put it over here, I'm not repairing this system, I'm replacing it with another system, another type of system. It's no longer a cesspool where it was located. It's not being repaired as a cesspool, it's being replaced as a septic system.
I don't want to get too hung up on the terminology. I don't know that it makes too much difference. If you have a system serving a 5-bedroom house that was installed prior to 1967, you are allowed to have a replacement or repaired system, whatever word you want to use, for a 5-bedroom house on that same lot. And that's what that is, and the state said that if, you can read the email, if the town says that you can do it, they're going to take a look at it. Now, I don't know if the state is going to approve all the waivers. I have no idea.
Okay. Look, I have it here, and I want to make sure this is the one you're referring to.
Yes, hello, Burr. The grandfathered status of the lot is, however, the grandfathered status of the lot is, however, many number of bedrooms the house had prior to 1967. This must be documented with town records. Hope that helps.
Yeah, but it doesn't say they're going to necessarily approve it.
No.
No, and
Okay.
that, I don't know if they're
Okay.
going to approve it because they are asking for some waivers here.
Okay.
So we don't know, but before it gets to the state, we have to get past you folks. I'm also, if I can concentrate on the zoning ordinance for a second, section 2.3 entitled Non-Conforming Lots is the section that was used to deny my clients the ability to put in a 5-bedroom system. And I don't think it's applicable because the way this is worded, it says a non-conforming lot is defined herein, which does not satisfy the requirements of section 6 of the zoning ordinance, which this lot doesn't, relative to minimum lot size by soil type, but which has received approval from the state of New Hampshire for a subsurface septic system, which we are trying to do, and leach field, shall be limited to the construction of a dwelling unit not to exceed 2 bedrooms. We are not constructing a dwelling unit. The dwelling unit is there. The dwelling unit has been there since at least 1922. I think, well, I can tell you, this section would be appropriate if you didn't have a house on the lot yet and you were looking to build one. But that's not our situation. We have a house there. And so I don't think that's a valid reason for declining the application. I would also point out, you've seen in your package, looking at the Badger letter from 1990, their independent view of it said 6 bedrooms. And I also want to point out that my client, I think I started down this road and got sidetracked. My client is aware of the concerns of immediate neighbors that might want to put up a mansion or something like that in lieu of the house that's there, which isn't going to happen, but to assuage those concerns, he is willing to agree that if he attempts to tear down this house and put up a bigger house, that this approval, hopefully, that this board will give him will be rendered void if he tries to do that. So what you're going to get is what you have there right now, which is the house that's been there since at least 1922, and it will be renovated because that's what they want to do. And I have a copy of this proposed. I set up the way you set up your decisions. I also emailed you one in Word, Frank, right as I was leaving the office because I forgot to do it earlier today. But those are here for the taking if anybody wants to take a look. I'm happy to answer any questions that you have.
Joan, go ahead, Joan. You look like you want to jump in.
I don't want to jump in.
I'll let the board ask some questions, then I'll give Burr an opportunity to speak if he wishes, and then I'll ask abutters or other parties that have direct interest in this to offer comments if they wish. So everybody have an opportunity to do something, talk. So, go ahead.
Yeah, my question is, this is an appeal of an administrative decision, so our guidelines are set forth by the state, and they're pretty strict. There is a category of special exemptions, and it talks about special exemptions should be in harmony with the general purpose intent of the zoning ordinance, and there has to be clearly defined reasons for granting the exemption.
Which page is that?
This is H5?
2.5?
Yeah, and under appeals of administrative decisions.
No, special exceptions are another class of
Okay,
zoning. It's, if we don't have it in Jackson, but as it says right here, the zoning ordinance may provide.
I just wasn't going to ask. This
Yeah,
is
yeah,
not applicable.
It's
Right.
Right,
it's-
okay, that's we're on the same page
No,
then. We're on the
For
same page.
example, we could, there's talk with Route 60 North about having certain kind of
I understand.
commercial but not commercial. You know, you can set it up so that the planning board can set it up so the zoning board of adjustment can say, okay, we'll provide an exception for this commercial establishment, but other commercial establishments
Right.
you can't, based on criteria they set, so this doesn't apply.
Doesn't apply, okay.
One of our other duties.
Right.
Any other questions?
I'm wondering about, I'm back on the effluent again. The last septic system failed, I understand, this cistern or whatever was over there.
Yes.
And have there been any studies done of the migration of the minerals and the nitrates away from it into the stream? Has anyone tracked how long this went on or how much damage is done? I mean, my fear is having kids go out and play in the backyard, they're gonna be crawling around a lot of chemicals you really don't want them near. Toxic waste, I mean, it's not a toxic waste site, but it's a toxic waste site.
Yeah.
Is there anything, what would you call it, remediation, is that the word that's used?
Well, if NHDES was looking for something like that, I guess, you know, that's something my clients would have to deal with, but this didn't occur on their watch, of course.
They own it.
They own it now.
They own
yes.
it now, it's theirs, they own it.
And, you know, I think it was just human waste and too much water with having, 26 or 36 kids in this house using a cesspool that was probably
Well,
built
yeah,
in
and it's-
1922.
And it's probably migrated quite a distance by now, given,
I
I
wouldn't
don't-
doubt that it, from what
but I
I've
mean, I think they own it now. I mean, they can always go back and sue the people who owned it before, that's certainly your business. But I would think that they are responsible now for anything that travels. And if kids are gonna be playing in their backyard, having 5 bedrooms, that, at some point in time, they're gonna be responsible for taking care of that. Are they aware of this?
Well, I guess that's why they're paying me to be here, so that they can take care of it.
Okay, if there aren't other questions, then excuse
Okay.
you for now.
All right.
Or if you'd like to, I probably make
hot for you.
All right.
any other comments?
Sure, I just wanted to reply to a couple of his comments there. I guess one was, he referenced 2.3, saying he didn't think it was applicable, and I guess I'd say the regs maybe aren't completely eloquent. I mean, they're not perfectly worded, but I was around when that regulation was put together, and that was the intent of the regulation, was for existing lots of record. If you took literally the argument that that does not apply, then you could say if you have an existing house on a lot of record, you can do whatever you want. There's no lot capacity requirements. You could put in whatever, provided it was an approved use, you could put in 90 bedrooms in that lot.
I'm not sure I understand the reasoning.
Well, the section 6 of the regulation applies to subdivisions.
Yes.
Section 2.3 was intended to apply to lots,
Existing lots,
basically
yes.
lots of record.
Yes.
So if that house exists there, he's saying 2.3 does not apply anymore, in which case he doesn't need to maintain any minimum lot sizing requirements.
So you could have
So
a
he could-
9-bedroom house if you
Yeah.
want.
So he could put a 90-bedroom house
Well,
in
no,
there.
It follows. It's logical what he's
Well,
describing.
Yeah.
and that interpretation of that makes the result absurd.
Exactly.
Yeah. So that's probably not the interpretation.
So
Well,
that's
no,
not
you-
how
well,
I
that's the-
interpret.
so, but you would need a building permit to do that. And to receive the building permit, what would prevent
Well,
the?
the same thing you've got here, they come in and say, oh, we can only have 2 bedrooms.
Well, no, but,
And then we come along and we'd say, oh, no, because the house is already existing. And the ordinance says for construction.
Construction of a dwelling.
So the house is already existing, I'm gonna put in 6 bedrooms here, and, your ordinance doesn't apply because it really only applies to new construction. And I would say that interpretation renders that thing.
It defies
Absurd.
logic that would be the intent of the law.
Yeah, it renders it
well, I'm
absurd.
trying to understand if there's not something else in the zoning ordinance. If somebody had a 3-bedroom house, let's say, with the three bedroom, that, that might, well, I guess it'd have to be I guess it'd have to be non-conforming, but, I mean, is there anything else in the zoning ordinance that,
Well, you
indicates
go
the
to
number of-
section 6, but his verses that section 6 references subdivisions.
yes,
I
See,
think you could say, well, it's only for
about-
subdivisions, well,
must-
that's kind of absurd too.
Must have been 6 years ago, actually, the same consultant came with a lot of record. And they made the argument that section 6 only applies to subdivisions, when the town had been applying it to existing lots
Yes,
of record
right.
for a long, long time. But they made the case that it only applied to subdivisions, because it does say subdivisions in there. And they hired a lawyer, and it became an argument. So the town went and put in 2.3 to take care of that.
but that only deals with non-conforming lots,
Well, non-conforming under
This
section
means-
6.
Right.
under section 6, so,
Section 6 is the size and the soil type. So the lot does not support
Exactly,
the number of bedrooms that you're trying to put in. You're
as
limited.
it currently sits.
Are these bedrooms roughly 10 by 10?
I've not been in the house, so I don't.
That's
I don't-
It's
I
about
don't-
1,100, it's about 1,100 square feet, it says 1070.
Right.
And there's stairways and bathrooms.
yep.
Right. I guess,
Pretty small
I had a
bedrooms.
couple other responses there was,
They're big closets.
There's no closets.
yeah, I've got a,
Are there closets in it?
I don't think-
I have not been in the house, so I just can't comment on whatever
There
is
were
inside.
45 beds in it.
9 by 10.
I don't know how many.
The cash
The
register.
outside walls.
Yeah.
Didn't know what.
Yeah, the-
I mean, I guess the other comment was, I think the comment was, what do we want to see put there? A 2-bedroom system or a 5-bedroom system that the house can accommodate? And again, I'm
Yeah, I
saying,
looked at that,
you,
yeah.
there's nothing stopping the owner from oversizing a 2-bedroom system
Square feet.
to be for 750 gallons per day, which is the flow for a 5-bedroom house, as opposed to 300 gallons per day for the other one. So they could still oversize the system if they were concerned about it blowing out. There's nothing in our regulations or the state regulations that stop them to do that. So they can still take care of that part. They're just not gonna get
The
approval.
business of 2 bedrooms then becomes an enforcement issue.
It becomes an
Because
enforcement
you expect that
issue.
only you have 2 bedrooms.
Right, it becomes an enforcement issue, and then if there's issues with nitrates or other contamination on a lot, that town then has something to argue. I just wouldn't be the one to say, okay, we're gonna do it anyway, so let us approve it. I'm not of that. That's how I kinda came across a little bit, is we're gonna do it anyway, so let us build a system so that when we do it anyway,
Because
it's
we've
not
got
gonna be a
5
problem.
bedrooms, we're gonna use them, and if you want us to put a 2-bedroom system in there, then so are you.
Right. Again, I know the arguments that it's been a 5 or 6-bedroom house, but again, if you're putting, in my mind, if you've got 26 or 36 kids in 5 bedrooms, that would be a pretty unusual residential 5-bedroom house. There's beds in the house, but it's not the same as a single-family
It's not
residential
shown
bedroom.
as a ski lodge, they show it as a ski lodge in our town records.
The deed shows it as, yeah.
Well, I don't think the deed does, I think,
Steinway's is-
I don't think I think our tax records, just have bedrooms and,
Right, I mean, what the tax assessor is gonna count as a bedroom for assessing a value to a lot's different than what it's used for a septic system.
Okay, and where did you see that it was identified as a ski lodge?
In the tax record, it says, I think, and somewhere it said Abenaki Ski Club in the tax record. And then when we were at the selectmen's meeting, one of the selectmen said he used to know the cook that worked there that cooked at the ski club. So that was, during our meeting, pretty good evidence that it had been a
and
ski
we know
club.
the current owners, or the prior owners, were the trust that ran the ski club, and they bought it in '78, and, they bought it from Steinmeister's. Steinmeister's sounded like it might be a ski club as well.
Yes, it was.
Steinmeister's?
Yeah, I knew all the guys that managed it.
Steinmeister's? Or at, this guy, Gordon Edmonds?
Frank?
When the Steinmeisters had it, it was a ski club, sure.
Who was it? Well,
Yeah, they got it.
it was just, let's, wait.
No, I just wanted, about the point you're making right now, clarification. There is evidence in 1991 that the town treated it differently than a residence, because right here you have a fire inspection, and it was addressed to the
Upper
Abenaki
finished
people.
floor.
And private residents
floor.
were never
No,
inspected.
yeah,
by
I
private
don't think
residents.
anybody's really disputing that it was
Well,
a
Well, no,
secret.
And if you subtract
Actually, there was a
for
little dispute because
Stairways
Rick is saying
and
that,
bathroom.
you know, it's really always been a five-bedroom house, and that's
Oh,
what
I'm
the
sorry.
town called it, and it's a five-bedroom
Stairways.
house.
I see.
And Burr is saying, well, you know, it
And
was a ski
bathroom.
club,
You're left with
and that's a change in use.
10 by 10 or less.
Helena's
And
pointing
then you
out that,
subtract the 4 inches from
they,
parole.
a fire inspection, which would be required for a
SBC
lodging house, but
SBC
not for a
requires,
residential dwelling.
I didn't mean to interrupt, but it was.
I
Well,
believe
that's a good point.
11 by 10.
So I guess that's it. I can ramble for a long time, but I'll do it there.
Okay, let's,
Okay, that's, I'll invite
Say
any,
life safety issues as well.
any other questions. I'll invite any abutter who wishes to make a statement. And I honestly encourage anybody to comment on the intent of section 2.3.
I think we've got a lot of comments on that, so we might be done with that.
We'll see. Anybody? Lisa?
Well, I understand that this is a complicated situation. I wrote my letter that I hired Andy Chalmers because I looked at that property myself to purchase. He told me that I'd be lucky if I could get a 2-bedroom septic. So I guess my kind of issue here is that the present owner had to have known that there were problems and that this soil and this size of the lot wasn't going to support 5 bedrooms, even though that's what it currently is. The other issue was that the basement was built below the water table. There's 2 oil tanks down there on their sides that had been continuously flooding every time it's wet down there even when it's not raining. There's water in there permanently. So there was oil all over the place. So following up on what you said, I think this could be classified as a toxic waste issue because there's oil in the basement. I really hope that the town follows up on that as an abutter, especially going into the wild and a stream that goes into the protected wild scenic river, Wildcat River. So, you know, there's some big issues in that property, which is one of the reasons I didn't buy it.
Thank you, Lisa. Any other abutter?
Yeah, I
Okay.
think we sent a letter in, and I think it's pretty self-explanatory, but basically, I think the law is not always logical. I think in the case of the selectmen, I think they did what they reasonably expected based on current laws. I mean, we've heard about other properties in town that have had cesspools that are flowing into the river, and this is an opportunity for the selectmen to bring all of those up to current standards. And I cannot discuss the change of use issue because I believe that is a legal issue that needs to be looked at really carefully as far as the courts are concerned. But I do believe there's evidence that the town treated it differently in the way that it's inspected it. And also, I think that I wouldn't put too much weight on the response from the environmental department, what is it, the DES, because basically they only addressed the grandfathering issue, and their grandfathering issue said, yes, it had 5 bedrooms prior to 1967. But they didn't get into the legal aspects of what Burr was basing his opinion on, and that is the change of use. So I think that the zoning board does not set precedent on their opinions. Every case is unique, but the selectmen are judged on a different standard. And I believe that what they did was certainly appropriate for this particular property, and also appropriate for any properties in the future that come in that have had cesspools and have had hazardous situations. So I think that basically there's no other decision that they could have reached, and I think that the code and the regulations do support the decision that they made.
Thank you.
Sean, when you're done with the, I'd like to
Yes.
respond.
Yes. John, you get to talk, yes.
Just as a person who had a similar situation back in my house, I had a cesspool system that failed, and at the time my house was 6 bedrooms, and I was not allowed to put the 6 bedrooms septic system back in my non-conforming lot because of the size and limitations. I had to have a raised system, and as a result, I can only have, I think it's a 3-bedroom septic system in there, so obviously I had to take out some bedrooms.
When was that?
That was back in '82, I believe.
Any other comments from anybody? Then I'll let Rick and then Burr make some final comments, and then I think we should have some discussion. Go ahead.
I don't understand, Burr, what you were saying about this section 2.3, and I won't address him directly, I don't know, he seems like a nice guy. But this section 2.3, you said something that if it doesn't qualify, that we could have a house with 90 bedrooms on a non-conforming lot. Well, no, you can't, because the state wouldn't allow it. The state would not allow 90 bedrooms on this lot, and you couldn't get any more than 5 because that's what it was grandfathered for. Grandfathering has to do with, vested rights and keeping the state or the town from just taking away those rights without due process of law. If you have a 5-bedroom house that pre-existed in 1967, the state says you can replace or rebuild that septic system. And that's all we're trying to do. We're not trying to expand it, but my client's entitled to it. And again, this section 2.3 doesn't apply. It's even entitled non-conforming lots. It doesn't talk about non-conforming buildings. And it goes on to say you can't construct a house on a non-conforming lot with more than 2 bedrooms. And we're not doing that. So.
Well, there would be no question in your mind though that if someone had a 2 or 3 bedroom home and they decided they wanted to expand it to make it more bedrooms, and the lot didn't conform with our section 6, which is tighter than the state, that they would have no reason to conform to our regulation because our regulation doesn't apply, because it only applies if they're building a house, not if they have a house there already.
Well,
If they could get a state approval, assuming the state approval was required, if they could get a state approval, and then they could go forward and have as many bedrooms as they could possibly get approval for, even though it didn't meet our section 6 guidelines.
I didn't really address section 6 guidelines because that's not really why I'm here.
Yeah.
But if the soils supported an increase of a bedroom in the example that you gave, the state would probably approve a larger system and allow the extra bedroom. But again, that's not what we're looking for here.
If I can make a quick.
Dave, yes.
Does the board make a ruling on state requirements or town requirements?
Neither.
They're saying if it meets state requirements. Does the board, I think the board's purview is the town's requirements, correct?
Is
And I
that,
think that goes to what Dave's saying.
okay. Burr, I think you, by the way, I'm not necessarily going to close the hearing. I think the board will have some discussion, and I'll leave the hearing open, so we may ask more questions of people if it comes to that.
No,
Go ahead, Burr.
I was obviously being a little extreme with 90 bedroom there, but that, I was referring to the town regulations. I was not referring to the state regulations. But as far as the town regulations goes, the number of bedrooms, what I'm trying to make is there would be no lot capacity, no maximum amount of sewage that you could put into a lot if it's a non-conforming lot, which this is a non-conforming lot, and it has an existing structure on it. So if you're changing use, if it fits into that category under 2.3, if that's what the argument's being made, then there's no limitations of what you can do in that category. Now, if it didn't have a house on it, if you took that argument, you're just basically saying if it doesn't have a house on it, you have to limit the lot capacity. If it's a subdivision, you have to limit the lot capacity. But if it's non-conforming lot, it's got a house on it, then there's no limitation as far as the town is concerned.
Well, that's not true, because you can't unreasonably expand a pre-existing non-conforming use. But that's a different section of our
It's
zoning
not
ordinance.
non-conforming use.
Right, well, that's, no, that's what he just said, if it's a non-conforming lot with a non-conforming house, we could expand it all that we wanted. And I'm saying, no, you can't, because you can't expand a pre-existing non-conforming use.
The house isn't non-conforming, the lot is non-conforming.
Well, the house is also not conforming,
But that's not an issue
but
tonight.
that's not an issue
Yeah.
tonight.
It's not an issue tonight. The house is not, it's in the
It's
setbacks.
a complicated issue.
Can I ask one question? Is it possible, not for him, but for some, assuming anyone has bought this place, it was a ski, you called it a flop house. I thought that was appropriate.
I
Can
did
it
too,
con-
my wife told me afterwards that that's not really the right term.
Well, can it continue to be so? Can it continue to have 32 people living in it, even though it's a 5-bedroom? I mean, if these people tomorrow, or I decided in my house, I'm going to have 32 unrelated people living in my house, and I make it a ski house. Is there anything in town to stop any one of us from continuing in that direction?
Only from the standpoint of life safety and Board of Health issues.
And
Well, and that's why they had a fire inspection in
Right.
that building, because they had 1 billion people in there, and they were a rooming house, not a
Were
single
all
family
of those
residence.
changes brought up, all the complaints that the fire inspector had in 1991, were they all brought up to standard?
I didn't.
I don't know.
I don't know, I don't think that's an issue tonight either.
Yeah.
Well, no, I mean, one
But-
person brought up the idea that individual homes don't have that issue. So, you know, it wasn't a residence, it was something else at that point in time, a lodging or whatever. It had different standards. But it also has been a house that hasn't met any sort of standard now for 25 years. So what does that make it? A mess with oil tanks floating in the basement. Is that a real residence?
Well, that certainly is an enforcement issue, but that's not necessarily before the board tonight.
All I know is I have way too many people coming to my house for Thanksgiving, and boy, if there's a room in here tonight that can help that out. I'd be
They all
really-
flush at the same time.
I think all we're being asked to decide is whether or not the selectmen erred
Yes.
in their
Correct.
ruling.
And so why don't let's cause, I'm not going to close the hearing, but I'm going to kind of restrict it to the board now. I'll summarize it by, I think, exactly that. This is an appeal of an administrative decision, even though Burr isn't really mentioned in the zoning ordinance. He's certainly applying the zoning ordinance. I think we have to make this, at least discuss or make the decision that, yes, this is something that we can review. I mean, it's not, because this is actually issuing a building permit. but,
Correct.
I think, once you think about it, it is. And I agree with you. I think this is entirely, I mean, the only real decision to make here is, I believe, is does 2.3, in what situations does 2.3 apply in this town? And is what we have here, which I think is a house that was used as a lodging house, a house that originally had 6 bedrooms, according to one of the people who were up there, was converted to a lodging house with some 20 to 30 bunks in those 6 bedrooms, and is now being changed back to a single-family dwelling, which of course is certainly permitted in this district. Does 2.3 apply for a change in use or not? And I think we'll spend some time talking about that. And some of it's probably going to come down to what the intent of section 2.3 is, as well as what it says.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to.
And I confess I don't remember what was talked about and what the intent was of 2.3 when it was adopted.
Could I,
So that's my summary, but
okay.
I'll leave it, let the board discuss things.
I don't feel that I could vote on this tonight, and I can't imagine that we can say enough here that would make me comfortable with a vote. And the reason for that is that these issues are really legal issues, and the next place this goes, if we refuse this, is to court. I would feel much more comfortable, because does 2.3 apply, doesn't 2.3 apply, it says this, it doesn't apply to that. These are all interpretations, and we have Rick Sager here, who is representing the applicant. We have no legal expertise here to help us sort through that, unless we're going to take everything that Rick says as a proper interpretation. So I would like to see us continue this and to have these issues addressed by our town council, or a council that's familiar with this sort of thing, before we wind up in Superior Court.
That's fair. I'll point out that I did write the selectmen and inform them that Mr. Schnodel, I'm sorry if you're watching.
Is it,
Schnodel is
is it Schneek or what is it?
Well,
Do
we'll
you
find
know?
out.
How does he pronounce his name?
That's not-
Shanagle, I believe.
Schneegel. Sounds Irish.
Okay, great. Well, that changes everything.
I communicated mostly with email, and of course, that doesn't help very much.
So, but I did inform the selectmen, because this is an appeal and not a variance, that the selectmen that the applicant was being represented by attorney, and that they may, if they wish, ask the town council, Peter Melia, of now, I guess, Hastings and Melia, so his congratulations to him, to be present, and they've not done that. So we'll have to,
Well,
what I think you're suggesting
do the
is,
select, do we get to ask for legal
we have the ability to
counsel?
add.
I think
We have the
anything,
ability-
anything a ZBA decides on is subject to appeal and ultimately going to court. In fact, much of what we base our decisions on are court decisions that have happened before. I think it's our responsibility to make a determination, and I would suggest tonight, and it's simply, did the selectmen err in their ruling? They're not soil scientists or engineers, they went with the recommendation of their town engineer. He's not an attorney, he's a soil scientist and an engineer. I don't know how we can determine that the selectmen erred following his recommendation.
I think we can, let me put aside the request to engage counsel. I do think we can discuss what 2.3 says and what the intent of 2.3 is. I think that's honestly the core issue here, and not whether or not, I don't think we need to be soil scientists to make that decision. In fact, I think it's, of all the parties that are or might be involved in the case, it's our primary responsibility to make the determination of what 2.3 means in this case and defend it.
Well, if you're going to say that 2.3 only applies to new construction, then that seems to me to completely negate any authority of 2.3 to regulate a change of use.
And I think that is something that is,
And was there a change of use? That's another thing that we
Yeah.
can decide.
but I mean,
But we have to decide that.
yes.
Well, we have to decide it, but we don't have to decide it with our eyes closed,
Yep.
or without getting some advice from somebody who is giving us advice that's not biased by the fact that they represent the person who wants the decision overridden.
Well, and I guess I'm not quite there that we need outside
Okay,
counsel
well,
yet,
that's my
but
kind of experience.
I hear you, and maybe we'll get there. But, you know, I still am trying to understand how we use 2.3, and I think I mean, if something is a conforming lot, which means section 6, I'm not aware of any, is there anything that identifies in our zoning how many bedrooms can be built? I think not.
No.
Section 6.
Section 6.
6 is the only thing that does.
Yeah, section 6.
No, but section 6 doesn't identify the number of bedrooms that can be on a particular lot, I don't
Well,
think.
it does, based on the on
It's
the
a-
soil.
it's a full soil.
size and so forth.
It's a
Well, where
formula.
does it say that?
It's an air.
Under the minimum lot size criteria, it says those minimum lot size criteria are based on 4 bedrooms.
So if you want 8 bedrooms,
You have to ratio
double
up,
that
not double it up.
Well, that's more, does that apply to,
See, here's the
that's
4.
614, I understand, but does that apply to,
Non-conforming.
well, I mean, I guess the question doesn't apply to cluster and multifamily, or is that meant to imply, are you suggesting it applies to single-family dwellings on a single lot?
That's what we're suggesting.
Mhm.
Okay.
And we have, in the past, used section
Right.
6 to have lots change and limit what people can do. We had a lot that came in up on Dundee Road, and we had to do a soil survey, and they actually had, they were the subdivided lot, they actually had to move the line because they didn't have enough
Square footage.
square footage, right?
So your argument is then also then that if somebody had a 3-bedroom house or let's say a 2 or 3-bedroom house on a lot and they wanted to enlarge the lot,
No,
enlarge
large the house.
to 4 bedrooms or put an accessory apartment on, we'd still look at section 6.
In our accessory apartment regulations, it says specifically that they have to have a septic system that's approved for what they want to do.
Right.
Now, if you wanted to do something other than that, you would argue that section 6 doesn't apply because it says subdivisions. So it doesn't apply to this, as Rick is arguing, that because it says building construction, that doesn't apply to this situation. And that's his job, that's their job.
So it then comes down to, for a non-conforming lot, what's grandfathered or is this a change of use?
And some people say it's a change in use. Certainly the selectmen must have thought it was a change in use.
And you're arguing that a change in use would then cause,
They wouldn't be grandfathered.
Why don't you ask them?
I have a question. If the house were to burn to the ground, it's on a non-conforming lot, and they were gonna rebuild it,
I think if it's burned,
what would happen then?
they would still be able to rebuild it as is,
As is.
because it's the replacement, I think. It's
Right, so
grandfathered.
you replace it on the old footprint.
But
With a new septic.
of course, everything would have to meet code.
Everything
Yes.
would have to be
So
today's
where
code.
would that fall apart then?
Well, they'd probably not be able to fit 5 bedrooms in that envelope and meet code.
In-
So
But,
if you can't meet code, you
In-
burn to the ground.
but that's not, I don't think
To
that's all.
to David's point, I hate to discuss this because it really doesn't apply in this decision in my mind, but if they apply for a building permit, which they will undoubtedly have to do some sort of construction in that house, will they be required to meet code?
Anything that they do in the building will have to meet current code.
Right. And those bedrooms at that size do not meet SBC code.
Exactly. That's what's
There you go. So,
trying to do. So there you go.
But as I'm saying, that's a whole other
It
can of
is,
worms.
and, you know, perhaps they just don't renovate the upstairs and they leave those rooms. I mean, but we don't have that in front of us tonight.
Right, and that's exactly to my point, is that the selectmen took the best testimony they could get to make their decision. I don't see how we can call that an error.
Well, I think we can if
if you
2.3.
agree- If you agree that 2.3 doesn't apply, and you agree that there is no change in use, then you'd have to say the selectmen made a mistake.
I do not feel that way.
Well,
Yeah,
I
but-
understand that.
But that's our job
That's how you
tonight.
would say they erred.
Exactly.
Brian, you're quiet.
I think I'm leaning the same direction of just the interpretation of whether it's an error or not, and I don't see that the selectmen made an error in their judgment so far. At least I
Well, is there any
understand.
question or anything we can do to discover, to discover more what the intent of 2.3 was when it was adopted?
I doubt it, other than speaking with people that were there at the time. I remember when Dick Bennett brought it to the, maybe it was, I was on the planning board at the time. I remember Dick Bennett brought it up, and it was
2006.
added, yeah. I mean, Burr was there, and you've got testimony of people who were there, and would still make the point that the interpretation that it applies only to new construction makes the ordinance absurd in its application, because how do you control then what we're trying to control?
And if you take that,
Non-conforming lots.
the purpose of the ordinance is to protect the health and safety. And I think Burr's explanation of, well, why not put a 5-bedroom versus a 2 is that the land can't take it. And then you get into enforcement action. So if you say the town made a mistake, it's losing its ability to enforce and then protect the health and safety.
So I think what you're saying is that hypothetically, if there were a 3-bedroom house on a non-conforming lot, and somebody wanted to add a 4th bedroom, either you have to say 2.3 doesn't apply and there are no controls at all in our zoning ordinance limiting the number of bedroom, expansion of the number of bedrooms on a non-conforming lot, or 2.3 does apply, and if you have a non-conforming lot, you can't expand the number of bedrooms that you have.
And we've told people that over
Yes.
and over and over again.
So then it comes down to what were the number of bedrooms? I mean, I think then it comes down to a discussion. Again, I think it's our job of is this a change of use or not? Is this a single-family house or something else, and being changed back to a single-family house?
Well, I guess if you want to go down that road, then you have to ask yourself a question: is a ski club a single-family home?
I think we may have to answer that question.
Well, I'm asking it.
And I think, as Eileen pointed out, the fact that there was a safety inspection done on the place indicates it wasn't a single family.
Correct.
No, well, I guess
Otherwise, there would not have been a safety inspection.
And our zoning ordinance does have a lodging in its definition, so we recognize that category.
well, and
But that's a
Lodging house.
conclusion we would be drawing rather than,
well, and is a ski club a lodging house?
It's as close as you
I mean, I think we all will agree that the zoning allows ski clubs, or doesn't?
Well, we've got them all over the
I know.
place. I certainly hope it does.
Yeah, we have lodging houses all over the place.
Yeah.
that are not called ski clubs. But, I mean, do we accept that a ski club is different than a single-family home? Do we accept that?
Yes,
I-
yes,
I
absolutely.
yeah,
Yes.
Do we do accept that?
I think so.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, I don't know what you mean by different. Different for zoning,
Different form.
No, it's a different animal, if you will. It's a different type of facility.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
well, I think if you
It's
read,
treated differently
Right.
because they're inspecting them all the time.
Right. So if we as a group or as individuals accept that there is a difference between a ski lodge and a single-family home, then this 2.3 applies.
Well, it's a change of use. And then, do we think that 2.3 applies even when there isn't new construction?
If it's a change of use.
Okay.
And we have all just agreed that it is a change of use.
I think we think it's a change of use.
Yes. So then, that draws me back to my conclusion: the selectmen did not err.
because you're arguing that 2.3 applies also to changes in use.
It doesn't say that, but we can, I mean,
It's been used.
I'm with you,
Yeah.
but.
Well, it removes the issue of grandfathering,
Mhm.
because, doesn't it, because the change of use
Well,
removes
that's
the issue of grandfathering, and that's
Yeah,
why it's
correct.
relevant?
Change of use
Once they.
negates the grandfather.
Negates the grandfathering.
And this state is chock full of court rulings on grandfathering. I mean, it's a moving target.
You can't grandfather, I don't know how they say it, but not
A toxic-
safety
a
issue,
toxic
toxic waste.
waste.
You can't grandfather it.
A court would have to
Toxic
decide.
waste is when
Well-
everybody puts it in the ground all the time, you know?
Yeah,
It
but
just
when you
gets
leave it on
too
the
small a
surface
lot.
is the problem. I got no problem with it going underground.
Well, I
but
don't think we
not
have to
on
go that
surface.
far, because our zoning ordinance also has the 6 years in it. I'm trying to find that
It-
reference.
It's actually
For
seven.
abandonment
Yeah,
of use.
it's on
I
the
mean,
first page.
I
Yeah,
think,
it is.
I think what we
But that's
have,
important, abandonment of use for more than 6 years.
what I think we have to decide is this a change of use that's happened or about to happen? And does 2.3 apply to changes of use?
Do we want to poll people on whether it's a change of use?
I thought we just did.
Well, not official.
Well, the single, and let's, you know, let's just read.
I'm comfortable with Dave's question.
I know, I'd like to just, let's read the definition of a single-family house and lodging unit, and make sure we believe.
Is there a definition?
Yes, there that one fine.
It was actually a dwelling unit. Let's think this is the permanent one, and a lodging house is the permanent one.
A lodging house means a facility in which rental sleeping accommodations are provided and in which meals may be provided as part of a fee. It's not quite this ski house, but pretty close.
Annual
Why is it
fees?
not?
Most,
Why,
yeah,
club
they have
fees?
annual fees or
Yeah.
something.
Yeah, and you
Every
get
ski
access
house
to the
I know
house.
stated.
Club dues and everything.
Yeah,
And then
I think that's pretty clear.
Yeah, it's pretty close to
and then
me.
a single-family house.
no, it's a dwelling unit.
No,
311.
I think single-family is also,
But 2.3 uses the term dwelling unit, so use that one.
well, no, but
And we use that for subdivision more than anything else.
the issue is what's permitted in the village district.
We'll do both of them.
Are they within 500 feet?
This is in the village district, yeah. Where's the district? I'm sorry to going back and forth.
Probably not, Dave.
So single-family residence, actually,
Probably not.
single-family residence is not defined, you're right,
It's a dwelling unit,
but a dwelling unit is defined,
page 2.
thank you. Means rooms or rooms with its own sanitary and kitchen facilities forming a habitable unit for
For
one
one
family.
family.
Used or intended to be used for living, sleeping, cooking, eating, and sanitation. And, you know, clearly, even though the house is designed for that, it wasn't being used as a single-family.
Used by one
house.
family.
So, I mean, I think we all agree that this was a change in use.
Oh.
Take a vote.
Take a vote.
Anybody disagree? Okay, we have that consensus.
Mhm.
That's official.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I'd like to continue talking about it, but I think I agree with Dave that I'm reluctant to make a decision tonight. I'd rather try to write something up and meet again and make sure we all agree with the logic of what I or somebody else who wants to volunteer would write. Because I think we're also coming to around the position that 2.3 would certainly apply to a existing, even grandfathered house on a non-conforming lot if they wanted to build additional space, additional bedroom. That
Well,
2.3 would not be.
We have applied that in this town numerous times.
So I guess what I'm trying to say is, clearly, even though it doesn't say it, the intent of 2.3 and the way it's been used, applied, is that it prevents a house on an existing non-conforming lot to increase the number of bedrooms.
That's right.
I can't remember any time when it came out.
I
with
just,
different
I
ones.
just have a problem with putting it off. I mean, I don't understand why, if we all agree it's a change of use, and if we all agree 2.3 applies,
Well, I don't think we're all there on 2.3 yet, or are we?
No,
Everyone else is.
You know, I'll go along with Jerry. If 2.3 doesn't apply because it's not written properly, there's nothing we can do about that.
Well,
Nothing we can do about that, and they'll go to court, and maybe they'll win, and maybe they won't. So that's,
well, if the,
we've got what we've got.
yeah,
and we
but if they
think
go
it
to court, I
applies.
want to make sure we make a decision as cleanly as we can.
Our decision should be clean, but we can certainly vote as to whether we think, and then you can write the decision.
I agree.
Or do you want to write the decision first?
Again, I think the
Well,
question
I'd
is,
like to understand the argument why we believe 2.3 applies to a change in use.
because I haven't heard a good argument as to why it does not. And again, I'm thinking about whether what was in the mind of the selectmen. Did they err? And I have not heard a good argument from anyone here as to how they erred.
Well, among
Well,
other
if they-
things,
It doesn't really matter what was in their mind if they made a mistake. If we agreed that 2.3 doesn't apply, then they made a mistake. You know,
Okay, we've already polled and agreed that it is a change of use.
Right.
Why don't we poll to see if 2.3 applies?
meaning that 2.3 applies because there's a change in use.
Correct.
Two 2.3 applies because they're not grandfathered. They're not
You
grandfathered
broke
because
the
it's
It's a change in
Change.
use. That would be the logic.
Yes.
Exactly.
You think about that. Does that,
What
That's
else you
what
gonna
I
use?
think it is. I mean, if they had been a six-bedroom or five-bedroom house there, occupied in that manner, then there wouldn't be,
Exactly.
there would be no question. I mean, I guess they're grandfathered.
Is
But
that-
we know that the state allows repair,
replacement?
loosely.
Yeah.
Of septic
And
systems.
if you go there, I mean, if you accept that argument, they don't even know if they can get the waivers.
No, that's true. They
I mean,
may
so-
not get them.
Yeah, I mean,
Although I'll bet you the state has a bias to grant waivers in those kinds of situations.
yet unknown.
So that's the logic.
Mr. Chairman, if I'm out of order.
Let me,
I'm usually advising boards like you as opposed to being on this side.
well, I mean, everybody sees the direction we're going.
Mhm.
I mean, I think if we do, I would like to, even if we have a straw poll, I'd like to make sure, I would like to have an opportunity to have a decision written that we all can look at, agree that the
It- it
logic
It
matches.
has been your course of action to write the decisions after we vote and make a decision.
It has been,
And
when I think there's clarity, when I think there's clarity, at least there's clarity in my mind how we're, with the basis of that, but I agree, that it has been the precedent.
I would ask that we vote.
Okay, well, let me, to be fair to the applicant, there's been a request to make a comment, so go ahead.
You can't read the ordinance the way you would like it to have been written. This section 2.3 says nothing about change of use. It is, in fact, you can't even get to the intent of the drafter of section 2.3 unless you believe it to be unclear. And it's crystal clear. It says construction, it doesn't say change of use. I would encourage you to speak to Peter Malia before you rendered a decision, because frankly, I don't have any great desire to appeal this board decision, but you're on the cusp of making some fundamental error in the interpretation of your ordinance, and I really think that you should have Peter weigh in. If you don't want to, that's fine. I've, basically said my piece, but you also have section 2.2 that you're sort of not really dealing with, that you don't have to deal with in this context, but it talks about non-conforming uses, building and structures, and it talks about a lot of the things that you're talking about. Why can't you add a 4th bedroom onto a pre-existing non-conforming 3-bedroom house? Because of 2.2, not 2.3. So, this is, before I came in here, this is a strange issue. You usually don't have cases like this. So, that's my 2 cents.
Yeah,
That goes back to Dave's point to begin
I think you got a
with.
choice. I think your choice is, as Rick has suggested, we either get some advice on this and take that advice into consideration. And perhaps Peter now says, oh, no, because you've done this and you've done that, this is, I would agree. Or we vote and then we spend the time and effort in Superior Court. I would think perhaps the prudent thing to do would be to get some counsel.
Well, if we voted to allow, the applicant wouldn't take us to Superior Court, but some townspeople might.
they would have to have standing, so the only people that.
The butters would have standing.
The butters would have standing, yes, they could.
I mean, so,
No,
mean,
people can always go to court.
making a decision based on fear of court, to me, is,
Not a matter of fear of court, it's just a matter of we know how reluctant the selectmen have been to spend money on legal fees in the past. And it's a lot less expensive to get a couple of hours of advice than it is to go to Superior Court.
I mean, I think, Jerry, what I'd like to do is, I think there's, though we've not taken a vote, I think there's a consensus among, or our vote would probably pass right now, that would interpret 2.3 as applying to a change of use.
No, it's not, no.
no.
It's not grandfathered.
Father, it's not
because of the change
grandfathered
of use,
because of the chance.
And 2.3 applies to anything that's
Anything.
a non-conforming law.
Exactly.
Yes.
All
I mean,
non-change of
I-
use is just getting rid of the grandfather.
See, to me, once we've decided that it's not grandfathered, we're finished.
Well,
I'm not yet convinced, but I would like to, I'd like to suggest that we try to draft what we think we're deciding and engage either Peter or somebody else if the town doesn't want Peter involved because of conflicts, for advice on this. I mean, I'd rather be a little bit prudent here.
And can we have a date set for that?
Yes, I would, practically, it'll take me typically it's taking me 3 days to a week to try and put a draft decision unless somebody else wants to.
So we
volunteer.
could meet next Wednesday for a vote?
That's next.
And then I also have to
Can't
find
set
an
the date
attorney.
for Thanksgiving.
probably a week is a little too.
Yeah, I think 2 weeks might be more realistic. What I'd like to do is, adjourn the hearing. Not close the hearing, but simply adjourn it to another meeting does 2 weeks work for people? What date is that? That's the day, week
December
after Thanksgiving.
4th.
That's December,
This December 4th.
December the 4th.
Wednesday. Yeah.
Just in case where there's a need for additional testimony from anybody present. I mean, I understand, right, I understand your arguments and Dave's arguments. I've sometimes found when writing things out, sometimes it's a little bit difficult to logically connect things. And again, if somebody wanted to volunteer to do this rather than me. Okay.
Is that a pleading?
Yeah, there's a pleading. All right, it's not my decision alone. I mean, if anybody.
Can I ask what questions would be put to the attorney?
I think I would lay out, I'd try to show, well, first, the attorney certainly could be present at the reconvened hearing. We could have a as much as I hate to say it, we could have a non-public session with our attorney beforehand, if we felt it appropriate, and then make a decision in public. But I think
You'd be asking the attorney whether the evidence supports our feeling there's a change in use in his mind.
No,
I
it's
think you-
no
I think-
grandfathering
Exactly.
because of a
And that
change in
there's
use.
no grandfathering because of the
Change of use.
Then I think you'd be asking, given the way we've applied 2.3 in this town for quite some period of time, does he think that that's supported? Or would he agree with Rick that, well, it's just written, it's as clear as the nose in your face, it's just construction? You know, it would be nice to know that before we get ready to, move forward to Superior Court. I would imagine that that's exactly where Mr. Shongle.
I think because of the questions that have come up here and the fact that the abutters are here and their attorney's been here and all this stuff has already been public, I think that I suggest that we have any further meeting, even with an attorney, in public, and then the public can decide
Yeah.
if they think what the attorney says that they're paying for.
I almost said that in part to see what you would say.
I believe in open government.
But again, I guess I'm asking for the board to say they're okay with that direction.
I'm okay with it, but I'm going to put a big qualifier. You get answers from attorneys based on the questions you give them.
I agree with that.
And I think that I would ask the question much more simply. Did the town engineer err in his recommendation to the selectmen?
It's not the town engineer erred, did the selectmen err in misinterpreting what was going on here? And
Okay.
Did they
Did the selectmen err in their ruling?
Well, that's our job.
That's our job.
That's our job.
We can have
Are
some.
we about to commit an error in our ruling, I think is perhaps more the question, but I'm happy, again, I'm happy to have others present when I speak to an attorney. Hopefully Peter can join us.
Maybe the only suggestion I would make, and again, it would be based on saving the town some money, if the attorney you checked with would be at the LGC.
They won't
From my prior conversations with the LGC, this is enough detailed about, this is much more detailed than I've ever gone in with the LGC.
I tried.
I would not,
What you get from the LGC is a lot of non-committal, is what you're saying.
Yeah, well, they'll write something,
Yeah.
but
They'll say
it
on
takes
this
them a
side,
long
next
time to get it done.
and they eventually say at the bottom of the letter, but you should talk to town council.
Exactly.
So I'd rather go to, if we can, go to Peter directly, because one way or another, he'd probably be the one defending suit if we got to that. And quite frankly, he may be on the fence, but he may have suggestions for ways we can do a better job of writing a decision, if that's the way we're gonna go. Clearly, I mean, I think we've basically made a finding of fact that this is a change of use. I don't think we expressed it that way, but yeah, that's one of the determinations we just made, which I think, unfortunately, I think we discussed and we understand why that is.
I think if that section is a little bit vague, which he's pointed out, which it may be so, I think the fact that it's a change of use will win the day anyway, because that can be easily proven. You can look at the way the zoning, the ordinance is portrayed, and the fact that the town's been following it for 15 or 20 or 10 years. It could be questioned by a court, but I don't think they'll be able to question the fact that it's a change of use.
2006 for what?
7 years, so it's been a while.
It was in 2006, yes.
So that is absolutely
About
right.
10, 15.
All right, all right, you know, I didn't look down, I don't read that, but it's been something like that.
The fourth.
So it's been 7 years.
You run the risk that if all of us are not here, we haven't taken the vote.
Who is unavailable to come on December 4th? Are we here,
You
Martha?
need the people who have heard the arguments to be there.
No,
Yes.
I don't think we require them to be here.
No, but they should
They
be,
should hear.
people who heard the arguments here.
Ah,
should
so
be-
the board,
No, we have
Yeah.
Not
everybody.
not all these people.
Not those people, but the board,
No,
and
but
the voting.
the entire board, save Dave Metesky, is here.
Okay.
As long as,
Everybody show up.
you know, most of us, as long as 5 of us show up, you know, we're okay. It'd be nice if all of us showed up. And I'm asking right now if there's anybody who knows they can't come on December 4th.
Questionable.
It's a
I'll
Wednesday,
try, I
yeah.
don't know.
We'll be back.
Okay. Well, if there are other comments, I'll suggest that we
Did Burr have a comment?
adjourn the hearing. Oh, go ahead. Burr.
If I can, I just wanted to say that 2.3, again, that interpretation had sort of been used for a long time prior to 2006.
So I'm trying to
It
say.
was in 2006 is when
It got codified, I
a
remember.
lawyer came and basically said, Section 6 doesn't apply.
Exactly.
Doesn't apply. So then the town went and adopted 2.3 to sort of fill the gap. So
Thanks, John.
We're always scrambling around drafting little things to try to fill holes in
Yeah.
people.
Don't leave quite yet, because I do want to talk to you about, is it okay to talk to Peter?
Fine.
That's an okay,
There you
great.
Do
go.
we get a fine on that?
Okay, so I'm going to formally adjourn or postpone? Continue the hearing to 7 o'clock on December 4th. I always get that wrong. Continue the hearing to December 4th at 7 o'clock at this location. Since we did in the meeting announcement, public notice indicate that that may happen. We don't have to re-notice everybody. There is a public meeting notice that will be done. Thank you.
Thank you.
And could I, could I make a motion for adjournment?
So moved.
Second. All in favor? Okay, adjourn the meeting.
Were you taking minutes?